It's probably safe to say that when all of us are young, we start to form ideas of what our lives will be like when we get older. And then as we do get older, those ideas tend to become more concrete plans. And sometimes those plans even pan out quite nicely. However, I would venture to say that all of us at some point in our lives will ask, how did this happen? And how did I get here? I know I have said that at least half a dozen times in the last several years. I was married when I was 24 years old, and I had my first child at 26, and my second followed about 18 months after that. So that all sounds pretty normal, right? But my marriage ended up not being the fairy tale that I thought it was going to be. One Christmas morning, my husband was threatening suicide, and I had to call 911. And that was the first time that I thought, how did this happen? And then the few years following that, we had a lot of marital issues, which we were unable to resolve, and divorce became unavoidable. And that was the second time where I asked myself, what happened? After leaving my husband, I only had one place to go, which was back with my parents. And after about a year of that, there was an opportunity that came up which would allow me to afford to live on my own. Barely. I was working as close to full time as possible without having my kids in daycare. And as long as my ex husband was paying child support, I was making it. But something happened about a year after I was out on my own where he couldn't pay child support for a little while. And so at that point, I decided it was time for me to finish my degree that I never finished, and that way I could make a livable wage on my own. My parents decided to take me back, and for those of you who have never experienced the joy of living with your parents after becoming an established adult, meaning being an adult for more than a decade, let's just say that there is a point in someone's life where their parents should not know every aspect of it. At first, I was pretty happy with it. I was okay because I was working on my goals and I had plans and I was moving forward. But these last 6 months have been really, really hard for me because I just feel very ready to be on my own and have some independence again. Um, and I really have been wondering a lot, like, how did I let this happen? And is it going to get better? But recently, I received some wisdom from a 12-year-old boy in my ward, and he was telling a story about how he was helping his dad lay some sod in their backyard. It was artificial sod, and it ended up being a lot heavier than I thought. So they had to call a lot of extra people to help. But the moral of his story was that sometimes we have things that have to get done but are impossible to do on our own. And that was exactly my problem. There's no way I would have been able to finish my degree without my parents' help, with a place to live and helping me with my children. I just needed a fresh perspective. And I know that any problem we have can be solved, but sometimes we just have to swallow our pride and accept help. And sometimes after we receive that help, the outcome is far better than we would have imagined, and it sets us up for long-term success on our own.